is the absolute truth.
And we meditate upon him, but he is the absolute truth.
Dharma pujita kaitravotara
Dharma pujita kaitravotara
paramo nimatsranam satam
paramo nimatsranam
vedyam vastavam atra vastu
vidyam vastavam
shivadam tapatrayon mulanam
shivadam tapatrayon
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamani Krite
bhagavate mahamani krite
Kimva Purer Ishvaraha
kimva pare ishvara
Sadyo Hidi Avarudhyate Cha
sadyo hidaya avudite
Krite Bihi Sususubhistaksanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient within itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one submissively, attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam Sukhamukad amrita dravya samyutam Pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam Muhur ahor rasika bhuvi bhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore it has become even more tasteful. Although its nectarian juice was already relishable by all. Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, verse number 35. And yet others say that you appeared to rejuvenate the devotional service of hearing, remembering, worshipping, and so on, in order that the conditioned souls suffering from material pangs might take advantage and gain liberation. So here Sutta Goswami is explaining different reasons. Kunti Devi is explaining different reasons why Krishna appeared. One is because of the prayers of Vasudeva and Devaki. Yesterday it was because of the prayers of Brahmaji, and now it's saying because Krishna himself wanted to rejuvenate the devotional service of doing what we're doing right now, hearing, remembering, and worshiping, so that conditioned souls suffering from material pangs might take advantage and gain liberation. There's very few suffering conditioned souls that want to get free of their pangs. Purport. In the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the Lord asserts that he appears in every millennium just to reestablish the way of religion. The way of religion is made by the Supreme Lord. No one can manufacture a new path of religion, as is the fashion for certain ambitious persons. The factual way of religion is to accept the Lord as the supreme authority and thus render service unto him in spontaneous love. A living being cannot help but render service because he is constitutionally made for that purpose. The only function of a living being is to render service to the Lord. The Lord is great, and living beings are subordinate to him. Therefore, the duty of the living being is just to serve him only. Unfortunately, the illusioned living beings, out of misunderstanding only, become servants of the senses by material desire. This desire is called avidya, or nescience. And out of such desire, the living being makes different plans for material enjoyment centered about a perverted sex life. He therefore becomes entangled in the chain of birth and death by transmigrating into different bodies on different planets under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Unless, therefore, one is beyond the boundary of this nescience, or ignorance, one cannot get free from the threefold miseries of material life. That is the law of nature. The Lord, however, out of his causeless mercy, because he is more merciful to the suffering living beings than they can expect, appears before them and renovates the principles of devotional service comprised of hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, worshiping, praying, cooperating, and surrendering unto him. Adoption of all the above-mentioned items, or any one of them, can help a conditioned soul get out of the tangle of nescience and thus become liberated from all material sufferings created by the living being, illusioned by the external energy. This particular type of mercy is bestowed upon the living being by the Lord in the form of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. So Prabhupada here explains the constitutional position of the living entity. We are all subordinate to the Lord. And this is very important to understand. In fact, in the introduction, I think Prabhupada explains that, let's see, he explains that the whole message of Bhagavatam is to convince people that we're subordinate to the Lord. And unless we understand that, we continue to try and be the competitor of the Lord. Now, let's see where that verse is in the Bhagavad Gita. Subordinate. Yeah. Bhagavad Gita, let's see, 15:19. Let's see what that says. Okay. In Bhagavad Gita 15:19 it says, "It is not that one should simply speculate academically. One should submissively hear from Bhagavad Gita that these living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this, according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, knows the purpose of the Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of the Vedas." So, when we become convinced that we are subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the purpose of the Vedas. And you can see that, like if you read the Rig Veda, it says you have to go to this demigod to get this benefit, and you have to go to that demigod to get this other benefit. So that just means that we're subordinate to the demigods. And then later on it explains that all the demigods, but right in the Rig Veda it explains that all the demigods are subordinate to Krishna. So therefore we are all subordinate to Krishna. That's the message of the Vedas. And that verse is in Tat Vishnu Paramam Padam Sadapasyanti Suraya Diviva Chaksus Atatam Tat Pipasnu Vipanyuvo. That says that the goal of the demigods is to serve the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. So that means they're subordinate to Lord Vishnu, who's Krishna. So than a living entity. The other point here says, the factual way of religion is to accept the Lord as the supreme authority and thus render service unto him in spontaneous love. So right now, we're not serving Krishna with spontaneous love. We're serving Krishna under strict rules and regulations called sadhana bhakti. But at one point, by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, that sadhana bhakti can become transformed into raganuga bhakti, where you spontaneously serve the Lord out of love and devotion. But we cannot jump to that stage of raganuga bhakti. When the spiritual master thinks we are ready to function on that stage, he will give us the proper instructions how to do that. And there's one bogus movement called the International Society for Divine Love, right? And they say that you don't need sadhana bhakti. We'll give you directly raganuga. Yeah. And the guru of that, fortunately he's dead now, he was a womanizer and a debauchee. Right? And most of his sannyasis are womanizers and debauchees. Right? Makes sense, right? He doesn't want to follow what the Goswamis, especially Rupa Goswami, instructed, that one has to go through sadhana bhakti very carefully and meticulously, and when the spiritual master deems the disciple ready, then he'll reveal how to attain this raganuga bhakti. But you attain it by following the rules and regulations, whereas this joker, he said, you don't have to follow all those rules and regulations. I'll give you directly raganuga bhakti. He said, because that's the goal, so I can give it to you right away. You see how clever people are.
How can you give that if he's qualified?
By having sex with his disciple. That's the way he gives it directly. You see how crazy people are. And the people that believe that are even crazier. And they all get cheated. And in that movement they have women sannyasis, and the women basically dominate in that movement. I won't tell you where their ashram is. You don't want to go there anyway. Yeah, it's in Texas, yeah. And good thing that guru is dead now. He was a real rascal. You know. Okay, so this is another point, that the factual way of religion is to accept the Lord as the supreme authority and thus render service unto him in spontaneous love. A living being cannot help but render service because he is constitutionally made for that purpose. The only function of a living being is to render service to the Lord. Well, see, service is our dharma, but Sanatan Dharma is our service to Krishna. All of us are serving someone or something, right? And if you don't have anyone to serve, you buy a dog and you serve the dog. We can see people serving the dog. They're walking down here on 228th Avenue, and you have the dog on the leash, and when the dog stops and starts passing stool, they're waiting, right? They don't like pull the dog, you fool, stop that, no. They wait, and then after he passes the stool, they stick their hand in their pocket and they take out a plastic bag and they pick up the stool. You see, because and the way they do it, you have to understand that the science, they put the bag on in the reverse sense, right? And then they grab the stool, and then they pull the bag over it, and then they touch. So they use the bag like a glove also to get the stool. And now they carry the stool, the dog stool. And so they keep going down the street. So who's serving who? Is the dog serving the master, or is the master serving the dog, right? And they don't clean the butt of the dog. And they sleep with the dog in their bed. where all the germs and everything are spread all over the bed, right? And the dog stinks. They don't bathe the dog every day, right? So after a couple of days, the dog stinks, and the whole house smells like a dog, and they don't notice it. Only the people that come into the house notice it, you see. This is how crazy they are, right? People think, oh, the dog is man's best friend, and the cow is my food. Actually, it should be the opposite. Eat the dog. Yeah, no, they won't eat the dog. Why? Because the dog is a carnivore. So carnivore meat is considered unclean. And cow meat is considered clean because they're herbivores. You see how everything's backwards. People have no understanding of life. So, the only function of a living being is to render service to the Lord. The Lord is great, and the living beings are subordinate to Him. Therefore, the duty of the living being is just to serve Him only. Unfortunately, the illusion living beings, out of misunderstanding only, become servants of the senses by material desire. This desire is called avidya, or nescience. And out of such desire, the living being makes different plans for material enjoyment centered about a perverted sex life. There you go. That is the absolute truth. And very few people understand it, although that's what they do. This is what they do, but they don't really understand that they're being... it's like when you want to control a bull. Now, it's not easy to control a bull. They're so powerful. Especially when they get into heat, they can kill you, right? They act very strange when they're in heat. You know, they don't want anyone to be near them, and the cow. And if you go near them, they attack you. You know, but then after it's all over, then they're friendly again. You know, if you take care of them, right? So this sexual desire makes a person crazy, and they'll do all kinds of crazy things, and they'll be thinking about it 24 hours a day. They'll be planning for it. So illicit sex is not only performing the act, it's planning for it, thinking about it, and seeing it, hearing about it. And some more ways that are considered illicit sex. So, if you look at the story of Chota Haridas, he didn't engage in any sex. He was a brahmachari. I think brahmachari or sannyasi. He's a brahmachari. Yeah, he was asked to go and fetch some special food, right, from Sikhi Mahiti, who's one of the three most confidential servants of the Lord. And she was an old lady. So he goes, knocks on her door, and she comes, opens the door. But right next to her is one young girl. So when he asks for the food from Sikhi Mahiti, he looks at the young girl, right? And Lord Chaitanya is Krishna, so he's Paramatma also, right? And he understands what he has in his mind when he's looking at the girl. He has sex desire. So when he comes back, he does his service. He brings back whatever it was that was asked for. But then Lord Chaitanya says, I never want to see him again. And the Chota Haridas is like devastated, you know. And the devotee said, "But why is that?" And he said, "I don't want to see him again. Don't ask me." And then the Chota Haridas commits suicide because the Lord said, "I never want to see him again." So it's one of the few times that in Prabhupada's books, after the chapter is finished, he writes an addendum or an additional thing. It's not a purport of a verse. Now it's just an additional statement that he makes at the end of that chapter, saying that Lord Chaitanya did this so that all the devotees would not even dare to look at a woman with sexual desire. And he was unrelenting. He said, no, when he hears that he commits suicide, he says, it's well done. And then Sikhi Mahiti, after he commits suicide, he appears before the Lord on a regular basis and chants Hare Krishna. See? So there were very mystical things happening. But that was to teach the devotees. After that, the devotees became afraid, and they wouldn't dare look at a woman, in a sexual way. So, illicit sex is not only performing the activity; it's all these other factors that are involved with it. And same thing for women who are devotees. They shouldn't look at men and be attracted to their bodies or whatever. So, this desire is called avidya, or nescience, and out of such desire the living being makes different plans for material enjoyment centered about a perverted sex life. He therefore becomes entangled in the chain of birth and death by transmigrating into different bodies on different planets under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Unless, therefore, one is beyond the boundary of this nescience, one cannot get free from the threefold miseries of material life. That is the law of nature. So unless we can go beyond the boundary of this sexual desire, it's not even performing the act of sex, it's the desire, it's the contemplation, it's different aspects of it. One cannot get free of the threefold miseries, adhyatma, adidaivika, and adhyatma, adibhotika, adidevika. And that's the law of nature. Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. I didn't mean to scare you this morning, but that's the story. Chota Haridas. And that's our story too. So we have to be very, very careful. So spontaneous love for Krishna is above all that, right? So you have to become not only visibly above it, but mentally and subtly above it. Then one is considered ready for Raganuga Bhakti. Haribol. Well, where's the Prabhupada?